Welcome to this 365 Freedom Strategy session. Today, we're breaking down the primary brick of the 365 Freedom ecosystem, identity foundations.
Yeah, it's good to be here. We have a lot of ground to cover today.
We really do.
And I want to set the tone right out of the gate. Look, this is not a motivational session.
Right.
This is an architectural review of the human operating system.
Yeah.
We're looking at the actual mechanics of why high performers stall out and how you rebuild the engine while the car is currently in motion.
Exactly. And the reason we're starting right here, the reason we call this the primary brick, is because we've seen the alternative play out just way too many times in the ecosystem.
Way too many.
Right. We work with entrepreneurs, we work with intense high performers, and we see the friction points usually when someone stalls or when a business just completely fails to launch despite having funding, having a plan.
It's rarely a lack of information.
It's almost never the information.
Never. We live in an era where the tactical how-to is completely commoditized.
Yeah.
You can go online right now and find the exact marketing script. You can find the sales funnel. You can find, the morning routine productivity hack.
Sure.
If success were purely just a matter of tactical application, everyone with a Wi-Fi connection would be in the top 1%.
But they aren't.
They aren't.
Let me push back on that slightly, though. Just to play devil's advocate for the person listening right now who might be really frustrated.
Go ahead.
We're telling them that information isn't the problem. But if I don't know how to run a Facebook ad, isn't that literally a lack of information?
Well,
If I don't know how to structure a P&L sheet, I genuinely need that tactical knowledge. So why are we framing tactics as the failure point here?
that's a completely fair challenge.
Yeah.
But we need to distinguish between skill acquisition and performance application.
Okay.
Obviously, you need to know where the buttons are on the Facebook Ads Manager.
Right. You have to log in.
That's just technical literacy. But look at the data points we see internally. Two people buy the exact same course on paid traffic. One generates $1 million in a year. The other never even launches a single campaign.
Yeah.
They had the same login, the same videos, the same PDF checklists. The tactical input was 100% identical.
But the output was 0 for one and exponential for the other.
Exactly.
It's that course collector
Yeah.
phenomenon. We all know someone, or maybe you listening are that someone,
Yeah.
who has a hard drive just full of unwatched masterclasses.
Yeah, we have to diagnose why that actually happens. And it is not laziness. Laziness is a lazy diagnosis.
I like that.
It's an issue of capacity.
Capacity, like time capacity.
No, identity capacity. Let's use a computer metaphor
Yeah.
because it really gets to the core of identity foundations.
Let's hear it.
Say you buy the latest, highest demand video editing software. That represents your new marketing strategy.
Okay.
It's brilliant code. It's designed to render 4K cinema quality video. But you try to install that software on a machine running Windows 95 with 4 megabytes of RAM.
Oh, wow.
What happens?
It freezes or it completely crashes the whole system. You get the blue screen of death.
The fan spins out of control, the system overheats, and it crashes. In a human being, we call that burnout or self-sabotage.
That's fascinating.
The person didn't fail because the ad strategy was bad. They failed because their internal operating system, their self-concept, couldn't actually process the input.
Wow.
So the prompt for the listener today is this. Are you constantly upgrading your software while completely ignoring your hardware?
That is a critical distinction. So when we see an entrepreneur who says, I just need a better sales script, what they're really asking for is a software patch.
Yes.
But if their identity is, I'm an imposter or I'm not aggressive enough to be a salesperson, the script will just fail.
Precisely. The tactic fails not because it's flawed, but because the structural integrity of the person wielding the tactic is insufficient.
Right. It can't hold the weight of the result.
If you hand a Ferrari engine to someone who genuinely sees themselves as a golf cart driver, they're either never going to turn the key or they'll drive it straight into a ditch.
And this is exactly why we're calling this strategy session Identity Foundations. We need to be surgical about this. This is not soft work.
Not at all.
A lot of people hear words like identity or mindset, and they tune out. They think, okay, sure, give me the real strategy, give me the spreadsheets.
Right.
But what we are arguing today is that Identity Foundations is the structural engineering of your business.
It is the requisite engineering. Look, if you build a 10-story glass building on a foundation designed for a single-story cottage, gravity is going to do its job.
Inevitably.
It doesn't matter how beautiful the interior design on the 10th floor is, it collapses. When we talk about identity foundations, we are talking about the strict physics of performance.
You can't outperform your self-image.
Not for a sustained period. You might be able to force it for a week or a month.
White-knuckling it.
Exactly, white-knuckling. But eventually you revert to the mean. You revert to who you fundamentally believe you are.
So if we accept that tactics fail without this hardware upgrade, we need to look at what the upgrade actually entails. Because upgrade your identity sounds great, but it's really hard to operationalize.
It is.
The source material we're analyzing today provides a very specific look at the exact moment this shift happens.
Yes, the micro story.
Right. It centers around this micro story, really a case study, of a protagonist sitting on the edge of their bed.
The edge of the bed case study. I want to analyze this closely because it is deceptively simple.
Paint the picture.
The narrative is this. The subject is sitting on the edge of their bed. They're staring at the clock. It's 6 a.m. The alarm just went off. They're staring at a stray sock on the carpet.
Yeah.
And they just freeze.
I want to zoom in on that. It's a scene of complete paralysis. And what's terrifying about this case study isn't that the house is burning down.
No.
It isn't that there's a screaming boss leaving a voicemail. The text is explicit here. It says nothing was wrong with it.
That is the diagnostic key for us. The subject notes that the job wasn't abusive. The tasks weren't impossible. It wasn't a toxically bad situation.
That's the line that really haunts me. Nothing was wrong.
Why does that haunt you?
Because usually when people think about making a massive life change, they think about escaping something awful. My boss hates me, or I'm massively underpaid, or the company is going under.
Right.
If something is objectively wrong, you have a clear enemy. You have a reason to leave. Trauma creates immediate clarity.
It does. If you're in a crisis, adrenaline kicks in. Survival instinct takes over and you move.
Yeah.
But nothing is wrong acts as a sedative.
A sedative, yes.
It's a colorless, odorless gas in your career. You're in a job that pays well enough. Your colleagues are nice enough.
The commute is fine.
You're essentially floating in a sensory deprivation tank of comfort.
And yet, despite that comfort, the protagonist describes this physical inability to move forward. The source calls it showing up for a version of myself that no longer fit.
We have to firmly separate task misalignment from identity misalignment.
Define the difference.
Task misalignment is simply, I am terrible at spreadsheets, and my job is 100% spreadsheets.
Okay, that's easy to fix.
Right. That's a skill issue or a role fit issue. You get training, or you ask for a different role. But identity misalignment is, I am playing a character that I have completely outgrown.
It's like wearing a coat that fit you perfectly 3 years ago.
Good analogy.
It's a high-quality coat, it looks nice, but you've grown, and now the seams are digging into your shoulders. The coat itself isn't defective. The growth is what's causing the friction.
Let's look at it biologically. Have you ever seen a lobster molt?
I haven't personally witnessed it, no.
It's a fascinating mechanism. A lobster has this rigid shell. As the organism inside grows, the shell obviously doesn't expand.
Right.
So the lobster starts to feel this immense crushing pressure, becomes incredibly uncomfortable inside its own body. The shell, which used to be its ultimate protection, turns into a prison.
Wow.
The protagonist sitting on the edge of the bed isn't clinically depressed.
Yeah.
They are molting. That pressure they feel is the biological signal that the identity they constructed 5 years ago is now too small for the psychology they inhabit today.
That reframe changes everything. Because if you interpret that pressure as depression, or worse, ungratefulness,
Right.
you try to medicate it. You try to suppress it.
Exactly.
But if you interpret it as growth pressure, you realize the only actual solution is to shed the shell.
Precisely. And the source text notes that the friction came from how I felt showing up there. It's the psychological tax of the performance. Every single day, this individual had to put on a mask.
Yeah.
And the specific diagnostic line that stands out to me the most is this. I didn't trust the future version of me who wanted more.
Let's stop right there. I didn't trust the future version of me. That is a remarkably heavy statement.
It is.
Because usually we think we're waiting for external permission, we think we're waiting for our savings account to hit 50 grand, but this suggests the blockage is a lack of internal trust.
It's the core diagnosis. Why do people stay in heavily misaligned situations? Because they trust the safety of known misery more than they trust the potential of an unknown future.
Known misery feels safe.
Because it's data. The current version of you is confirmed data. The future version is just a hypothesis.
And human beings are biased toward data.
Always. Even if that data confirms a limitation. The protagonist was stuck because they were waiting to feel ready. And the strategy we pull from this is that readiness is a mirage.
You never feel ready.
You never feel ready for an identity you haven't inhabited yet. It's logically impossible.
That connects directly to the concept of the quiet decision. But before we get to that, I want to drill down on the exact state of mind that keeps people paralyzed on the edge of the bed.
Let's do it.
The source material has a very specific word for this state. It calls it the danger of fine.
Fine. It's a four-letter word in the context of high performance.
It really is.
The email source material states this explicitly. Fine is often the language we use when we're afraid to name desire.
Afraid to name desire. Fine acts as a shield. Think about it. How's work? It's fine. How's the new business launch? It's fine.
Yeah.
But let me play devil's advocate here again. Isn't fine just polite social etiquette? If my neighbor asks how my company is doing while we're getting the mail, I'm not going to dump my existential crisis on them. I just say, it's fine.
Context is everything. Socially, yes, fine is just a lubricant. It keeps the grocery store line moving.
Right.
But the source material isn't talking about small talk with your neighbor. It's talking about self-talk. It's about when you look in the mirror or when you look at your P&L sheet or your marriage and you label it fine internally to avoid doing the hard work of optimization.
It's like a termination code for the brain's problem-solving engine.
That's exactly what it is. The moment you label an area of your life fine, your brain stops looking for solutions. It files the folder away into long-term storage.
My health is fine. You stop looking for a gym.
My revenue is fine. You stop innovating the product line. Fine is the zone of comfortable stagnation. It acts as a suppression mechanism against the inherent risk of wanting more.
Because if I admit that fine isn't actually enough, I suddenly have a huge problem to solve.
You create a gap between your current reality and your new desire. And that gap creates tension.
And people hate tension.
Most people will do anything to avoid tension. So they label their situation fine to digitally close the gap without having to actually change their behavior.
The source also brings up this idea of the responsibility trap. The post content highlights how society often frames ignoring this internal tension as being responsible.
Yes. This is the dominant societal narrative. You have a good job, you have a steady paycheck, you have dental benefits. It's fine. Be grateful. Be responsible.
We're conditioned to view the suppression of our own expansion as a moral virtue.
We absolutely are.
It's a guilt mechanism. Who am I to want more? There are people struggling just to pay rent.
I call that toxic gratitude.
Toxic gratitude.
We weaponize gratitude against ourselves to suppress our own ambition. Society tells you to be happy with the status quo because others have it worse. So when you feel that lobster shell pressure, you immediately tell yourself, stop it. You're being ungrateful. Put your head down and be responsible.
We end up gaslighting ourselves.
We completely gaslight our own potential.
Yeah.
We interpret our biological desire for growth as a character flaw. But the 365 Freedom Protocol reframes this entirely.
How so?
True responsibility is not maintaining the status quo just to make everyone around you feel comfortable. True responsibility is telling the absolute truth about who you are becoming.
That is a radical reframe for a lot of people, because if you're suppressing your capacity, if you are operating your business at 40% because you're trying to be responsible and safe, you're actually being deeply irresponsible with your potential.
Right.
You're actively withholding your best work from the market, from your family, from the world.
You are serving the old identity at the direct expense of the future self. You're stealing from your future to pay for comfort in the present. And the text warns us, it says, there's a quiet line you cross long before you leave your 9 to 5. That line is the death of fine.
The moment you recognize fine is insufficient.
It's a dangerous moment, but it's a requisite one.
I want to challenge everyone listening to us right now. Where are you currently using the word fine? Think about your current funnel, your health metrics, your key relationships. Where are you deploying fine to mask a lack of courage?
That's the real question.
Because that's what we're really talking about here. It takes immense courage to look at a situation and say, this is objectively good, but it is not mine.
And that realization leads us directly to the mechanics of how the transition actually happens. Because culturally, we have this completely fictionalized Hollywood idea of change.
The movie scene.
Right. The scene where the protagonist flips the desk, screams at the boss, and walks out in slow motion while the soundtrack swells.
The Jerry Maguire moment. We are culturally addicted to that idea. We think change has to be explosive and loud to be valid, but the source material explicitly debunks this myth.
It dismantles it completely. The text says, no dramatic leap, no overnight change, and no bold announcements.
Why is that so crucial for our strategy?
Because if you're waiting for a dramatic external event to force your hand, or if you're waiting to build up enough anger to finally cause an explosion, you are operating reactively.
And identity foundations are built proactively.
Exactly. Why do we advise against the blaze of glory exit? Because the dramatic leap is dopamine-driven, not character-driven.
It feels powerful in the moment.
It feels incredible for about 20 minutes to flip the desk. But then you wake up the next morning, the dopamine is gone, you're unemployed, you have no strategic plan, and worst of all, you still have the exact same internal identity.
You burn the bridge before you even bought the lumber to build the boat.
You tried to solve a complex internal problem with a loud external explosion. It never works.
So the antidote to the dramatic leap is what the source calls the quiet decision.
The quiet decision, yes.
It happens when absolutely no one is watching. It happens in the silence. The text says, that morning I made one quiet decision. I admitted I wanted a different life.
Notice the syntax there. Notice the lack of action verbs.
Right. They didn't say, I quit that morning. They didn't say, I launched a Delaware LLC that morning. They said, I admitted.
It is a purely internal admission. It is not an external performance for an audience. This is what we call operationalizing honesty.
Okay, unpack that.
The source states, honesty is where identity foundations begin. Why is honesty the very first brick? Why can't we just skip that and start with the Q3 business plan?
Because a business plan built on a foundational lie is incredibly fragile.
Exactly. If you don't admit what you actually want, if you refuse to admit that you're an entrepreneur or an artist or a leader, then your external actions will always be tentative.
You'll be trying to do something rather than being the person who does it.
Honesty creates structural integrity. When you quietly admit to yourself, I want a life that feels like mine, you calibrate your internal compass.
And without that calibration, every tactical business move you make is just noise.
It's the difference between navigating the woods with a broken compass versus a calibrated one. The calibrated compass doesn't magically teleport you to the destination, but it ensures that when you do expend energy, you are moving along the right vector.
The quiet decision allows for an internal departure.
Internal departure, yes. You leave the job or the situation mentally and emotionally months before you ever leave it physically.
Which is highly strategic.
Extremely. It allows you to build the architecture of the new identity in the safety of an incubation period. You don't announce it on LinkedIn. You don't post a multi-thread on X. You just know.
It feels incredibly powerful, like you're holding a secret.
It is a secret, and secrets act as containment vessels for energy.
Explain that.
When you broadcast your big plans too early, you dissipate the kinetic energy. You get cheap validation from the likes and the comments. And your brain chemically registers that as having already accomplished the goal.
You get the reward without doing the work.
Right. By keeping it quiet, by strictly keeping it internal, you build systemic pressure. That pressure eventually becomes the fuel for execution.
So the quiet decision essentially creates a pressure cooker of positive intent.
It does. But to hold that pressure without venting it prematurely, you need trust. And this brings us right back to the trust architecture we touched on earlier.
There is a central quote in the material that we need to analyze. It says, your next level begins the moment you stop doubting the person you are becoming.
Stop doubting the person you are becoming. That specific phrasing implies that the default state of the human mind is doubt.
Is it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And biologically, we need to normalize this for the listener. Your brain is a prediction machine. Its single primary job is to keep you alive until tomorrow.
And it does that by predicting future threats based on past data.
Correct. So if your past data says, I am a mid-level manager, your brain projects, I will continue to be a mid-level manager. This is a safe, survivable state.
So the moment I try to introduce a radically new data point, like I'm going to be the CEO of my own agency, the brain freaks out.
It registers a massive prediction error. It sees a massive discrepancy between historical data and the new projection. It immediately flags this discrepancy as a lethal threat. It floods your system with doubt. It triggers imposter syndrome.
So the doubt isn't a sign that you're incapable of being the CEO. It's literally just a sign that you are defying your own internal algorithm.
Exactly. Doubt is not a stop sign. It is merely a checkpoint. It's just your amygdala saying, hey, we are leaving the known map. Are you absolutely sure about this?
And the critical mistake people make is interpreting that biological checkpoint as a validity judgment on their actual dream.
Right. They think, I feel doubt, therefore this goal must be impossible for me. No. You doubt it simply because it is novel. That is the only reason. The 365 Freedom Protocol requires you to feel the systemic doubt and proceed with execution anyway.
The source mentions this specific tension where the life you're living and the life you want start pulling in opposite directions. That tension is physically exhausting to carry around. It's pure cognitive dissonance.
Because you are actively holding two mutually exclusive self-concepts in your mind at the same time, the settler and the explorer.
You can't hold both indefinitely.
You cannot. One of them has to win. The insight from the text is this. You can't expand into a future self while clinging to the identity of someone who settles.
This is the ultimate pivot point. This is where the rubber meets the road. You have to willingly let go of the settler identity to make room for the explorer. And again, that doesn't mean you march in and quit your job today. It means you quit the identity of the person who believes they are stuck.
That's the nuance. You can still be physically executing your duties in the old role while emotionally and mentally operating from the new identity. But you have to shift from waiting for permission to actively naming the desire.
Permission is never coming from the outside.
Never. No authority figure is going to knock on your front door and say, okay, we've reviewed your files. You are now officially authorized to be successful. You have to authorize yourself.
Borrowing belief from the future. I love that concept. It's like taking out a commercial loan on your own potential.
And you pay down the principal on that loan with daily action. Every micro action you take that aligns with the future identity pays it down. Eventually, you own the identity completely outright. But you have to initiate it with a line of credit built on trust.
Let's go back to the micro story, the edge of the bed, for a second. There's a temporal aspect to this that I really want to highlight. The text says, I kept telling myself I would take action once I felt ready.
Yes. The great lie of procrastination.
Ready is a destination that literally does not exist.
It's a horizon line. You walk toward it, and it just moves further away. If you sit around waiting until you feel 100% qualified, fully funded, and totally confident, you will die waiting.
The quiet decision is entirely about acting before you are ready.
It is the conscious decision that the desire to grow is mathematically more important than the desire to feel ready.
I want to touch on the short-form video script source material for a moment. It has this great hook. There's a moment before every big change where you quietly admit you want more. And it talks about listening to the version of you that's been whispering for years.
The whisper.
Why do we spend so much energy ignoring the whisper?
Because the whisper is highly inconvenient. The whisper usually demands that we systematically dismantle a structure we spent years building.
Right. Say you spent 4 years in law school and another 5 years making partner.
And then the whisper says, I want to open a commercial bakery. That whisper is terrifying. It threatens the sunk cost of your entire law degree. It threatens your social standing at the country club. It threatens your parents' approval.
So what do? We turn up the volume on the noise?
We crank up the distractions. More Netflix, more alcohol, more manufactured busy work at the firm. Anything to drown out the acoustic frequency of the whisper.
But the whisper doesn't just go away.
It never goes away. It just metastasizes. If you ignore the whisper of desire, it inevitably turns into the scream of regret. Or it manifests as chronic physical illness.
Or deep bitterness.
Look at people who are constantly bitter at the world. Usually they're just furious at themselves for ignoring their own whisper for 30 years.
That is a sobering thought. The scream of regret. We definitely want to avoid that outcome. And really, that's the core mission of 365 Freedom, to catch the whisper while it's still a whisper and engineer it into a viable strategy.
We are essentially in the business of whisper translation. We take that raw, terrifying impulse of I want more, and we build an architectural structure underneath it so it can actually survive in the real world.
But step one is hearing it.
You have to hear it first.
Let's transition to how the listener can actually do that today. We've diagnosed the problem, we've looked at the trap of fine, the failure of tactics, the necessity of internal trust. Now we need to move to strategic implementation.
How to.
Exactly. The source material gives us some highly specific, actionable protocols based on the instruction documents.
We can synthesize this down into a strict 3-step protocol. This is an exercise the listener needs to execute immediately following this session.
Step 1, the pause.
The text instructs. Take 5 quiet minutes. It heavily emphasizes total stillness. Now, this sounds embarrassingly easy, but for an entrepreneur or a high performer, 5 minutes of unmedicated silence is absolute torture.
It really is. I tested this protocol the other day. I parked my car, turned off the podcast, and put my phone in the center console. And I'm telling you, within 30 seconds, my right hand was physically twitching.
Yep.
I wanted to check Slack. I wanted to look at an email. I just wanted some input.
That physical twitch is a literal dopamine withdrawal symptom. You are rapidly withdrawing from the digital noise that keeps you safely distracted from your own internal whisper.
It's intense.
You have to push through the twitch. You have to artificially manufacture a vacuum of silence in order to catch the telemetry data coming from your own intuition. You cannot hear a whisper in the middle of a hurricane.
Okay, so you push through the 5 minutes. Step 2, naming.
Name the version of you that's trying to emerge. This is the critical mechanism. You have to assign language to it. Is it the founder? Is it the creator? The leader?
And there's a crucial modifier in the instructions here. It says, write down what you want without trying to justify or explain it.
That is the hardest part of the entire protocol. As high performers, we are trained to constantly justify our moves. I want to launch a SaaS product because the MRR multiples are really strong right now. Or I want to get into real estate because of the tax advantages.
We act like defense attorneys for our own dreams.
We do. We try to build an airtight legal case for our desires so that if our peers question us, we have a bulletproof defense ready. The protocol demands that you strip all of that away.
Just name the raw desire.
I want X. Full stop. No because attached. The because is the back door where doubt sneaks back into the room. Justification is a defense mechanism. Pure, intrinsic desire requires no defense.
Let's role play this with the listener so they hear the difference. What does a highly justified want look like versus a clean want?
Okay, a justified want sounds like this. I want to step away and start an independent consulting firm because I have 12 years of enterprise experience. The current market analysis shows a massive gap in B2B logistics, and the margins will allow me to retire 5 years early.
I mean, this sounds incredibly logical. It sounds smart.
It is logical.
Yeah.
But from an identity standpoint, it's structurally weak. It's completely dependent on external validation. It relies on the market analysis holding true.
Right.
A clean want sounds like this. I want to lead my own firm. Or even more stripped down. I want total autonomy.
Wow. It feels almost naked.
It is naked. It's highly vulnerable. And that is exactly where the power lies. When you strip away the Excel spreadsheets and the logic, you are left with the raw nuclear energy of the desire itself.
And that energy is the fuel.
The market analysis is not fuel. It's just data. You need deep burning fuel to push through the inevitable brutality of scaling a business. Only the raw, unjustified desire burns hot enough to keep the engine running when everything goes wrong in year 2.
So the directive for the listener is to be totally naked with your ambition in this step. Don't dress it up in responsibility or logic.
Not during step 2. Later, when we move into tactical execution, yes, we will aggressively use logic. We will look at TAM and CAC and strategy, but you don't start the fire with the spreadsheet.
You start with the spark.
You build the engine around the fire. Most failed entrepreneurs try to build a complex engine first and then spend years searching for some wood to burn.
Fire first, engine second. I love that. Which brings us to step 3, the admission.
You must admit that the current path is merely fine and declare that fine is officially unacceptable.
This is the closing of the door.
It is the point of no return. Once you consciously admit that fine is insufficient, you cannot unknow that truth. It permanently forces the internal system to reorient. You stop waiting for authorization and you start actively inhabiting the new reality.
It sounds like a simple writing exercise, but I guarantee 90% of the people listening right now are terrified to actually write that sentence down. Because the second the ink dries, it becomes real.
It becomes incredibly real, and that is why it is the primary brick. If you cannot execute this step, if you cannot sit alone in a room for 5 minutes and tell yourself the unvarnished truth about what you actually want, then no amount of advanced marketing strategy, no amount of VC capital, no amount of executive coaching will ever save you.
You're just building a very expensive castle on a foundation of sand.
Exactly.
The blog post material mentions this phrase, foundations are built in the inner world first, in the way you speak to yourself.
Well,
This self-talk component, is this referring to daily affirmations? Because frankly, that can feel a bit fluffy for our audience.
it has absolutely nothing to do with affirmations in the pop psychology sense. Standing in front of your bathroom mirror saying, I am a billionaire, when your account is overdrawn is not helpful.
It just feels delusional.
It actively creates a delusion gap. What we're talking about is the automatic narrative you run when the room is quiet.
The internal editor.
Yes. When a launch fails or you make a massive mistake, does your internal voice say, see, I knew you were an imposter, you have no business doing this? Or does it say, okay, that was an expensive data point. I am still the person who is capable of figuring this out.
It's the editorial voice of your life.
You are the editor-in-chief of your own narrative. Most people employ a terrible editor who actively hates the main character.
That's a brutal way to live.
You need to immediately fire that editor and hire one who is deeply invested in the protagonist's ultimate victory. That is the essence of identity foundations. Installing an editorial voice that consistently interprets reality in favor of your future self.
And the source material says, identity grows in honest moments. Notice it doesn't say identity grows in successful moments.
No, it doesn't. Because success is a lagging indicator.
A lagging indicator.
Honesty is a leading indicator. You can look like a complete failure on paper today, but possess a rock-solid identity foundation because you are fiercely honest about where you are and the vector you are traveling on.
That person is dangerous.
Highly dangerous to the market. That person is going to win. It's just a matter of time. Conversely, the person who looks highly successful on paper, but is secretly living a misaligned lie, they are incredibly fragile.
One market correction, one bad quarter, and they shatter.
Because their entire identity is tethered to the external metric, not the internal truth.
We are trying to build anti-fragile identities here, identities that actually gain strength from volatility.
That is the only kind of identity worth engineering.
I want to challenge the listener on this waiting for permission concept one more time before we wrap. The video script says, you stop waiting for permission. We know what obvious permission seeking looks like, but what are the really subtle, sneaky ways we do this?
The sneakiest form of waiting for permission is chronic learning, eternal student mode.
Ah, that hits close to home.
I just need to get one more certification before I launch.
Yeah.
I just need to read 3 more books on sales psychology.
It perfectly mimics actual productivity.
It feels like work.
Yeah.
But it is just sophisticated stalling. You are subconsciously waiting for an external authority, a certification board, an author, a guru, to stamp your forehead and finally say, you know enough now, you may proceed.
Procrastination by preparation. I've definitely lived in that neighborhood a few times.
It's a very common trap. Another subtle form is feedback addiction.
Feedback addiction.
You have a solid idea, but you refuse to execute on it until you've asked 5 of your peers what they think.
Right. Let me just run this by the mastermind group.
But you aren't actually looking for strategic feedback. You are looking for consensus. You want them to absorb some of the risk. If they all say go for it and you fail, you can tell yourself, well, the group thought it was a good idea too.
Sharing the blame.
Exactly. A true identity foundation means being fully willing to be the only person on earth who sees the vision.
Consensus is the ultimate enemy of innovation, and it's definitely the enemy of identity shifts. Think about it. Your peers know the old version of you. They are socially and emotionally invested in the old you.
Yes.
Asking them for permission to become the new you is essentially asking them to willingly destabilize their relationship with you. Of course they're going to hesitate.
Which is exactly why the quiet decision has to be solitary. It is not up for a committee vote.
All right, let's synthesize all of this into the macro ecosystem view. As we said, this is a 365 freedom strategy session. How does the quiet decision dictate the long game?
The entire 365 freedom ecosystem is designed to engineer a life of total autonomy. That is the end state. But you cannot build a new autonomous life on top of an old subservient story.
You just can't.
The quiet decision provides the required vector. It establishes the true north. Without it, you are just moving very, very fast to nowhere in particular.
It's the physical difference between speed and velocity. Speed is just distance over time. Velocity is speed combined with a specific direction.
Precisely. Identity foundations generate velocity. And there is a final warning we need to extract from the synthesis. Ignoring the internal stretch is not safety.
People think it is. They think, I'll just ignore this feeling and stay where it's safe.
That is not safety. That is merely a delay of the inevitable. The internal tension will continue to escalate until it physically breaks you, or until you consciously break the pattern. The only strategic move is to break the pattern on your own terms, today, through the quiet decision.
That is powerful. The actual risk isn't in changing. The catastrophic risk is in remaining the same when your entire system is demanding evolution.
The cost of inaction is always the highest cost.
I want to circle back to that quote one more time because it's so central. You can't build a new life on top of an old story. How do we rapidly identify our old story?
The old story is simply the automated loop of limitations you repeat to yourself. I'm just not good with money. I'm not a natural leader. I'm just a technician.
It's the ceiling.
It is a hard ceiling. You will never, ever rise above the story you consistently tell about yourself. If your core story is, I am someone who struggles, your brain will subconsciously sabotage any impending success that threatens to invalidate that story.
Because the brain prioritizes consistency over happiness.
Absolutely. If you fundamentally believe you are a failure, your brain acts as a heat-seeking missile to find evidence proving you right. It will actively ignore massive wins and hyperfixate on minor losses. To change the trajectory of the life, you must rewrite the story first.
You have to start telling the new story before the external evidence even exists.
What is the literal definition of vision?
And that is why the quiet decision is the primary brick. It is the moment you officially begin drafting the new narrative. It's page 1 of the new script.
And scripts go through heavy revisions. You don't have to have the entire plot figured out on day one. You just have to commit to writing in a completely different genre.
We have covered a massive amount of psychological ground here today. Let's ground it back in the tactical reality of the 365 Freedom Mission. Why is Identity Foundations the prerequisite module? Why not start with financial literacy? Why not start with operational leverage?
Because money, time, and leverage are merely resources. Identity is the manager of those resources. If you hand $1 million in funding to a founder with a poverty identity, they will find a way to burn it. We see this with lottery winners all the time. If you give infinite free time to a person with a victim identity, they will squander it. You absolutely must upgrade the manager, the identity, before you scale the resources.
Otherwise, you are just pouring gasoline on dysfunction.
You cannot scale dysfunction and expect a functional outcome. You have to repair the foundation first.
That is the ultimate takeaway of this strategy session. You cannot scale insecurity.
And that is why we are so uncompromising about the quiet decision protocol. It is deeply unsexy work. It is completely invisible work. You can't put it on a dashboard. But it is the prerequisite work that makes all the visible scaling possible.
I'm thinking about the listener right now who is nodding along to this, maybe feeling a bit exposed. They're realizing they are currently sitting on the edge of the bed. What is the immediate next step for them emotionally?
High levels of self-compassion. The source text was clear. Nothing was wrong with it. Do not beat yourself up for being exactly where you are today. You were there because your old identity got you there.
It was doing its job.
It did its job perfectly. It kept you safe and sheltered. You need to genuinely thank the old identity for its years of service and then cleanly fire it.
Thank you for your service. You are officially relieved of duty.
Exactly. Do not approach this transition with self-hatred. I hate my job. I hate myself for staying this long. That is highly toxic fuel.
It burns dirty.
It burns dirty and it damages the engine. Approach it with cold clarity. This served me well then. It does not serve my objectives now. I am making a strategic decision to move. That is clean, sustainable energy.
Clean energy versus toxic fuel. We need clean energy for the long haul.
Always.
As we bring this analysis to a close, let's revisit that edge of the bed moment one final time. The source concludes with, that moment became the first brick in building a new identity. I love that it specifies the first brick. Singular.
Construction is a sequential process of laying one brick at a time. Do not attempt to build the entire cathedral today. Just lay the first brick.
And the first brick is the admission. I want more.
That is it. If you can cleanly execute that admission today, this strategy session was a success.
The micro-story ends with a powerful line, just honesty, the kind of honesty that creates direction. And as we've established, direction is everything.
Without direction, raw speed is irrelevant. With precise direction, even a slow, methodical pace guarantees you arrive at the destination.
So, the immediate mission for you listening today is simple but profound. Find your 5 minutes. Secure your silence. Turn off the notifications. Sit on the edge of the bed or in your parked car or at your desk and ask the question, who is the version of me trying to emerge right now?
And trust whatever answer comes back, even if it terrifies you.
Especially if it terrifies you.
Yes.
Your next level begins the moment you stop doubting the person you are becoming. That quote needs to be on your office wall. It should be the lock screen on your phone.
It is the operational mantra for the identity shift.
We are actively building an ecosystem of truly free individuals here. But freedom is always generated in the mind first. If you remain a psychological prisoner to your old identity, no amount of liquid capital will ever actually free you.
Autonomy is an inside job first. Then, and only then, does it manifest externally.
I think we've thoroughly deconstructed the architecture today. We've mapped the failure of tactics, analyzed the edge-of-the-bed paralysis, exposed the danger of the word fine, established the power of the quiet decision, and laid out the trust architecture required to sustain it all.
We have. The blueprint is clearly laid out on the table. Now it is entirely up to the listener to pick up the first brick.
And remember, this is a strategy session. Strategies are engineered to be executed in the real world, not just passively consumed. Don't just listen to this audio and nod your head. Run the protocol.
Execute the pause, execute the naming, execute the admission.
The gap between listening and doing is where potential goes to die. Close the gap today.
Close the gap.
If you're ready to stop pretending and start building a grounded identity, visit 365 Freedom online to join the community. This has been a 365 Freedom strategy session.